with the government of Kenya, and in particular with our good friend and co-host, the Honourable Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir, Minister of Energy and Petroleum for Kenya. Minister, thank you very much for welcoming us to your city. We're delighted to be here with you, to your city and to your country. It's a great pleasure to be here. And really fitting that we're here, the first of this series that has taken place in Africa, and no better place to be doing that than here in Nairobi, where Kenya is such a leader domestically in clean energy and energy efficiency, regionally and globally. And so we're in the right place for this really important event. Over the next 2 days, 500 people will join us from over 70 countries to talk about energy efficiency, and several thousand more will join us on the live stream. So we're really fortunate to have gathered so many people. We're very grateful that you all travelled to be with us here in Nairobi, and we're looking forward to the discussions over the next 2 days. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the stage to our host, Minister Davis Chirchir of Kenya. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. Good colleagues, let me start by a very warm good morning. Good morning, and welcome to Nairobi, Kenya. It's a beautiful morning, and it's great to be hosting all of us. I'm told over 70 countries, but maybe this morning 60 countries are represented here, with over 27 African countries. So karibuni sana. We're happy to host you. It's a great opportunity to be hosting IEA. I'm told, of course, we are all aware that International Energy Conference on Energy Efficiency is coming to Africa for the first time. And it's really a pleasure and a great opportunity to be hosting you guys in Nairobi, Kenya. Yesterday we had a gala dinner with Kenya Association of Manufacturers, a very colorful gala dinner. We were celebrating our 20th energy efficiency and conservation program that we've been running for a while. So what a time to be also having IEA in town, and we are happy most of you who are resident within the Safari Park Hotel were able to join us, and it was truly, Brian tells me it was a very, very nice event. So let me start by basically going through my structured notes. It's with great pleasure and honor that I welcome you today at the 9th International Energy Efficiency Forum here at Safari Park, Nairobi, Kenya. And welcome, Commissioner, welcome. Nice you're able to join us here today. I'm informed that, like I said, we have a very high-level representation of over 27 African countries and 60 countries in total present today. Brian has just told us we'll be having up to 70 countries joining us here, and that's really a great success. And again, want to say welcome, and welcome to Nairobi. As we convene here, I extend my warm greetings and appreciation to all participants for the commitment to advancing energy efficiency and conservation efforts globally. Energy efficiency and conservation stands as a crucial pillar of Kenya green inclusive development and economic growth agenda. In recent years, Kenya has made significant strides in this area, recognizing the importance of optimizing energy use, minimizing waste, and mitigating environmental impact. Our nation has been proactive in developing and implementing enabling policies aimed at improving the sustainability of our economy and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. These policies are aligned with the Paris Agreement and our national determined contributions, demonstrating our commitment to global climate action. The National Sustainable for All Action Agenda of 2016 outlined ambitious targets for achieving universal access to modern energy services, doubling energy efficiency improvement and doubling the share of renewable energy by 2030. These targets underscore our dedication to a sustainable energy future. The enactment of the Energy Act here in Kenya of 2019 provided a robust legal framework to support energy efficiency and conservation efforts. In Kenya, the legislation empowers regulatory authorities to enforce energy performance standards. They perform renewable energy sources and incentivize sustainable practices. The energy management regulation established under this act have been instrumental in enhancing adoption of energy audits, promoting compliance, fostering best practices in energy management. By providing clear guidelines and incentives, we empower business to adopt more sustainable practices, thereby reducing operating costs and enhancing competitiveness. And like I said, we run a competitive process. We do audits. We rate the best industry in the various segments, and we do come once every year on a gala dinner to basically reward those who perform and recognize performance. Kenya has also taken leadership in developing harmonized regional minimum energy performance standards for lighting appliances, further demonstrating our commitment to energy efficiency. However, achieving energy efficiency and conservation goals require collaborative efforts, actions, partnership across government agencies to private sector, civil society, and international stakeholders. Through our multi-stakeholder platforms and joint incentives, we leverage collective expertise and resource for accelerating progress towards a more efficient, energy efficient, and sustainable future. I would like to acknowledge the fruitful partnership we've forged, particularly with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the United Nations Environmental Programme, Copenhagen Climate Center, in promoting energy efficiency and conservation in our local industries. Furthermore, our collaboration with the International Energy Agency is crucial in strengthening our capacity in data collection, modeling, scenario planning in all energy sectors. We look forward to continued collaboration with IEA on various initiatives aimed at advancing energy efficiency and conservation in Kenya. And we really appreciate IEA even as we host this energy conference here in Nairobi today. Brian, I know Dr. Birol is joining us tomorrow, but thank you, and thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, energy efficiency and conservation are integral to Kenya's sustainable development agenda. By enhancing innovation, adopting best practices, and fostering collaboration, we are poised to unlock the full potential of energy efficiency and conservation benefits, present and future generation alike. I want to thank you. Now, karibuni means welcome. You do know that Kenya, the first remains of human were found in some place called Lake Turkana. Lake Turkana is where we have the biggest wind farm in Africa. One wind farm of about 310 megawatts, and that is where the first human remains to date have been located. So when my president speaks, he likes to welcome everybody home, because this is where humanity started. So welcome home, and lately he has made Kenya a visa-free country, and he thinks that it is unfair to ask people to seek for permission to come home. So welcome again, and looking forward to fruitful deliberations as we engage and share way forward on this very important subject on energy efficiency. Last year, when we were hosted for the 8th International Energy Conference in Paris, we learned that really climate change is real, and energy conservation, energy efficiency is so important, to the extent that the only clean energy is energy which is not generated. So thank you very much, and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Chirchir, and I think I speak for everyone when saying we do feel like we are at home. We feel very warmly welcomed here. And I want to say in front of you, Minister, and the Principal Secretary, that we have had excellent collaboration with all of your colleagues and all of the Ministry and the government and all of the friends we're making here in Nairobi. So we're delighted to be here. And I do remember this time last year at the 8th Annual Conference, one of the real highlights was Minister Chirchir's participation when he announced that the 9th Conference would take place here in Nairobi. This is the largest event by far the IEA has ever held on African soil, and it's really appropriate and an honour for us that it is here in Nairobi and on the subject of energy efficiency. So we are very pleased. Thank you. And we're also very pleased to have two really important speakers coming next who represent the key regions for this global debate on energy efficiency, both who participated last year when we really had a global conversation about how to raise ambition on energy efficiency, and where governments came away from last year's conference committing to doubling progress in energy efficiency. And of course, thanks to the leadership of our next two speakers, that became a global reality at COP28 late last year. The first time ever an energy efficiency commitment has been made at COP, and one that we're delighted to play a part in terms of building the momentum so that governments around the world could understand that doubling energy efficiency progress is both desirable and necessary and indeed possible. And it's for the work of the people here in the room, learning from each other, helping each other with their experiences, that really makes that ambition possible. And this year is all about turning that ambition into action. So what can countries and businesses and individuals and organizations do to turn that global ambition into reality as soon as possible? That's our task for the next 2 days. And so I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, who was one of the key actors in making that doubling target a reality last year, and of course is already playing a key global role in turning that ambition into action. And so please welcome to the stage Kadri Simpson, the European Commissioner for Energy. Commissioner Simpson.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and it's an honor to be here today with you. And I would like to start by thank our hosts, because hosting this event here in beautiful Kenya, in the very lively capital of Nairobi, is really a great experience. And as Brian told us, this is the largest event IEA has ever organized in Africa, but as far as I know, this is the first ever energy efficiency annual event that is being held outside Europe. And the fact that we are here in Kenya is very telling, because at COP28 last December, Kenya was an important driving force in launching the global pledges on renewable energy and energy efficiency, and being here is also a strong signal of how important this continent is in the energy revolution. The deal was reached last December, and this was a historic moment, because for the very first time in history, we committed to transitioning away from fossil fuels, charting a 1.5 degree pathway for the world's energy transition, and now the focus must turn to implementation. And in this regard, energy efficiency will be the key, and not just for countries with high energy consumption today. By doubling energy efficiency improvements globally by the end of this decade already, we can make a very big difference, including here in Africa, where still too many people do not have the luxury of turning lights on after dark or cook with less polluting fuels. And the big question, of course, is funding. Specifically, what actions do we need to take to secure funding for our global energy efficiency targets? The EU believes that there are three critical factors to play. So you can call it a three-point plan. First, we need strong policy and legislative framework. These set targets, identify measures, clarify the role of the public sector, and give the private sector greater stability and predictability. Over the past 5 years, the EU has consolidated its own framework. We now have a binding final energy consumption target for 2030 with mandatory and voluntary measures for reaching it. We also have new rules for reducing emissions and energy use of buildings across Europe. The second critical factor for securing funding is an efficient use of public resources. This is important for fostering innovation and ensuring we have available data and analysis to support policy and investment decisions. Well-targeted funding and financial instruments also lower potential risk and transaction costs. The EU stands ready to explore areas for enhanced cooperation with all our partners on how we can better use public resources. And we have already committed 2.3 billion euros to be mobilized in partner countries, in addition to massive domestic efforts. Third and final factor at play, we need a stronger dialogue on energy efficiency with market and private investors. Public financing for energy efficiency has grown significantly over the past years, but we need to ramp up annual private investment too. This is critical. It is estimated that private investments will account for at least 80% of total investments. The EU is tackling this head-on in its domestic market. Just recently, the European Commission launched an energy efficiency financing coalition. It establishes a new cooperation framework between member states, financial institutions, and the Commission to help unlock private investment for energy efficiency improvements. And we are also committed to helping others mobilize investments. In Africa, the Desiree program with the European Investment Bank is boosting investments in energy efficiency on the continent. We also want to make funding and financing a key pillar of the implementation of the COP28 outcomes and mobilize all potential funders, including multilateral development banks. Ladies and gentlemen, in the past, energy efficiency was often overlooked in discussions on energy and climate policies. And now this is no longer the case. Energy efficiency is critical on so many levels. For driving the clean energy transition, for enhancing our competitiveness, for making our economies and societies more resilient. Alongside renewable energy, we need energy efficiency to meet the world's growing energy demand, because otherwise we will not phase out fossil fuels on time. Energy efficiency brings many other benefits too. It improves air quality, it helps businesses save energy so they can invest their savings in other productive areas, and it encourages more efficient industrial processes. The bottom line is, energy efficiency is a clear, no-regret option. So I call on all of you here to be the ambassadors for energy efficiency in your countries and organizations. Whether you are public or private sector, from Europe or Africa or elsewhere in the world, I call on us all to work together as we strive to implement our global energy efficiency targets. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Commissioner. That was really great to hear that focus on finance, which is so key, and it is a theme we will be talking about today, and how much can be unlocked in energy efficiency and clean energy if finance itself can be unlocked, and it's a key issue for every country, but also globally. And also to remind us that there are many dimensions to energy efficiency beyond climate, including competitiveness, resilience. Europe has shown a lot of leadership in these areas, and as Minister Chirchir said, we had a great privilege last night to join the Kenyan Association of Manufacturers Annual Energy Management Awards, which really brought home the reality of companies right across Kenya working very hard to become more competitive, more resilient and more productive through energy management and energy efficiency, and the real reality of what energy efficiency means in terms of people's lives. So it was great to hear that. Our next speaker needs no introduction because she's well known as a regional and global leader on these topics around energy, clean energy, energy efficiency. And of course it's entirely opposite, given that where we are today, that we hear from her at the very beginning of our deliberations. So I'm very honoured to be able to introduce to you African Union's Commissioner for Energy and Infrastructure, Amani Abizaid. Dr. Abizaid, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and Jumbo. Allow me, Minister, I know that you welcomed everybody, but again, I'm Africa's Commissioner, so to join you in welcoming all our guests to Africa, and to thank everyone, especially the IEA, for joining us here. And let me also, on behalf of the African Union, to thank the people and government of Kenya and yourself, Minister, for hosting this important event or bringing it to Africa on behalf of the continent. That's really, truly an honor for all of us to have you here. I would like also to congratulate again the IEA and the Kenyan government for convening and hosting this year's annual global conference on energy efficiency for the first time on the African continent. This is evidence of growing cooperation between Africa and the rest of the world. It is worth emphasizing that energy is at the heart of our global shared goal for peace and for prosperity of people on this planet. This is as enshrined in our 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. That's African Union or Africa's Agenda for Development. And the development blueprints for most of our countries. Despite energy's recognition in our development agenda, access to modern energy services remains a global challenge, and especially for us in the continent where more than half of our population are still without access to electricity. And about 1 billion, that's 90% of our population, who do not have access to clean cooking. Unfortunately, without a radical shift in accelerating access, trends show that the energy access challenge shall persist beyond 2030, with Africa being the most affected. The first fuel that we have to address the energy access gap in Africa is energy efficiency, which does not only provide an opportunity to enhance access to modern energy services, but supports our climate action objectives. In addition, energy optimization cuts our energy costs, thus improving business and industrial competitiveness and promoting energy equality. And through the work that we are doing with, through our agency in charge of energy, the results of the studies and the work that we are doing are great, because just by saving or being more efficient in our energy can avail funds that can help us build more than 700 energy power stations across the continent. Africa has vast untapped energy efficiency potential, and the proposed trajectory is both ambitious and technically feasible. And the way we're addressing it in the African Union actually cuts across all sectors. I know that here, or very often in this conference, we focus on electricity, but also I encourage everybody to talk about efficiency in agriculture, in transport, and especially transport, which is a big chunk, when it comes to fuel, when it comes also to emissions, in buildings, in industry, and appliances and equipment. And I'm saying appliances and equipment because here we do have a big issue on the continent in terms of, energy efficient appliances and equipment and the control of markets. And I hope that among the participants we do have some also who work, on the market side, and also policy and law enforcement, in order to ensure that what gets in our markets is really up to standards, whether it's transport or appliances, that it's energy efficient and is of the best practices when it comes to and standards when it comes to energy consumption and emissions, which is not always the case. For perspective, energy losses also in electricity transmission in Africa, distribution in most of our African countries is between 20 to 40%. So without really dealing with the issue of transmission, we will still have a big challenge for us when it comes to energy efficiency. Cognizant of these ambitions and also of the challenges, we do have, our energy efficiency strategy, and I wish here to thank Danish government, European Union, Swedish government, because the work that we are doing on the energy efficiency, on the African a single electricity market, which is going to be operational 2040, the African master plan for energy that we are almost finalizing now has benefit largely from also the partnership with the governments and their agencies I just mentioned, but also with African Development Bank, World Bank, and other important agencies. So I thank our partners for that. I do have here more text, but as you are accustomed, I never really stick to the text that is being given to me ever. I want to be very candid with you how the public in our countries views it when we talk about energy efficiency. We have two points of view. One says, so we don't have even electricity, and you come and talk to us about energy efficiency? I think this speaks to, it's a valid point. So we need also to educate our people. Why are we talking about energy efficiency beyond the technical arguments? In a continent, as I said, where most of our people do not have electricity. And the second is about some government and sometimes also some international agencies request from our governments about removal of subsidies when it comes to electricity as a way to disincentivize and for energy consumption, electricity consumption to be more efficient. I would like for everyone to know that we are also a continent that is starting, when it comes to our industrial programs, our agribusinesses, and we need energy, and we need it at affordable prices. Also, the households, the level of the economic level, of the households cannot necessarily afford unsubsidized energy. It's a very tricky and difficult question that is faced by all our governments without exception. How to deal with the huge subsidies that are the public budget is paying, while at the same time making sure that our population is not negatively impacted, and at the same time trying to incentivize people to or change their behavior to optimize the use of electricity where available. And the other aspect, which I'm happy, I think we are on the right track now when it comes to its resolution, and I'm really happy that the African Union has been heralding this issue for a long time. And we saw a turning point in COP28, that's the issue of clean cooking. We saw a turning point in the issue of clean cooking in Africa in COP28, when for the first time we had a presidential session. For the first time ever, our heads of states were dealing with clean cooking. And of course, last week, the fantastic summit we had in Paris also about clean cooking in Africa. I think this is, a turning point when it comes to energy in general and energy efficiency as well as emissions. I want you to bear these questions in mind. And I want us to be candid and to think beyond, as I said, I know many of here are technical people, beyond these technical aspects, to also see how we in Africa can practically embrace energy efficiency while at the same time ensuring, that our energy access programs are progressing at the level and scale that we ambition to have. Last but not least is the request from IEA, and for the next summits on energy efficiency, I would like us to go sectoral this time. Especially transport, which is again a big consumer of energy, and also there are some developments that worthy of our of our attention and also sharing experience and expertise. With this, we have a heavy agenda, I know, but I reiterate my thanks to all of you for being in Africa, my thanks to IEA for having this, for holding this summit, and my special thanks to Minister Chirchir and the Kenyan government for hosting this event on behalf of the continent, and I thank you.
Thank you indeed, Commissioner, and thank you in particular for reminding us that this is an issue about people and making people's lives better and bringing access to people, enhancing their quality of life, creating employment, creating economic growth and social development. So thank you for that emphasis. And this is one of the many themes we will discuss over the course of today. We are going to go into now a number of thematic sessions where ministers, business leaders, other key thinkers are going to share their thoughts on these various key topics for energy efficiency. We're looking forward to hearing from everybody and to getting your input as well. I should remind people that several languages are available in interpretation on the headsets in the room and on the live stream through the various channels, so do please avail of that. And I also want to remind you that as well as the main session today, we have a very particular honour tomorrow morning when we open in the morning, where the Deputy President of Kenya has been kind enough to honour us with his presence for a formal opening, along with the IEA's Executive Director, Dr. Fatih Birol, and of course Minister Chirchir. So we're particularly looking forward to that session as well as all the others. So please stay in your seats. We're going to translate now from the high-level opening. I want to thank the Minister and the two Commissioners. I want to thank all of the Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen and friends that are with us today. Looking forward to chatting to all of you through the sessions and through the breaks and all the conversations. And I'm going to hand over now to Coral Cook and the panelists for the first session as we leave the stage. Thank you very much, and please a round of applause.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So this panel will be tackling the topic on doubling of energy efficiency and ensuring affordability. We have a great team of panelists in front of us, and as we've heard this morning from the earlier speakers, the topic of energy efficiency is important. But looking at Africa specifically, I think the topic on access still needs to be given attention, because today, of the global people without access, 80% of those are in Africa. And of course, 1 billion people without clean cooking. So I will introduce the first speaker, His Excellency Claudio Barbaro. He's the Undersecretary of State for Environment and Energy Security in Italy. Just give me 1 minute, I read your bio quickly. Claudio Barbaro is the Italian Undersecretary of State for Environment and Energy Security. He's also a member of the Chamber of Deputies from 2008 to 2013, and a Senator of the Republic from 2018 to 2022. He has been the Undersecretary of State at the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security since November 2022. His Excellency Claudio, kindly take the stage.
Buongiorno a tutti, desidero innanzitutto ringraziare il governo del Kenya e l'Agenzia internazionale dell'energia per aver promosso la 9ª conferenza globale dell'efficienza energetica qui a Nairobi. Colgo l'occasione per salutare i colleghi ministri e rappresentanti istituzionali di Uganda, Tanzania, Germania e India. Vorrei aprire il mio intervento con una citazione di uno storico ma attuale proverbio africano: se vuoi andare veloce corri da solo, se vuoi andare lontano cammina insieme. La citazione sintetizza una riflessione profonda che ritengo catturi in modo eloquente la complessità delle sfide globali che stiamo affrontando oggi nei settori energia e clima. Il 2023 si è chiuso con un accordo storico, inclusivo e concreto, visto che alla COP28 per la prima volta della storia abbiamo adottato un linguaggio, un obiettivo comune, una data per la fuoriuscita dai combustibili fossili nel settore energetico per raggiungere emissioni nette zero entro il 2050 e riconoscendo il 2030 quale decade decisiva. Inclusivo, poiché ritiene conto delle istanze profondamente diverse dei Paesi, ma che riconoscono un quadro e un obiettivo comune guidato dalla scienza. Concreto, perché l'accordo COP28 identifica gli strumenti e le soluzioni tecnologiche per limitare l'aumento delle temperature entro 1,5 gradi, definendo l'impegno di triplicare le rinnovabili e raddoppiare l'efficienza energetica a livello globale entro il 2030. L'iniziativa odierna rappresenta l'occasione per ribadire l'impegno dell'Italia nel sostenere una transizione energetica sicura, giusta e sostenibile a livello globale, in cui l'efficienza energetica è il principale pilastro per accrescere la sicurezza energetica, promuovere la competitività industriale e favorire la riduzione delle emissioni in tutti i settori. Nell'ambito del quadro europeo e alla luce degli obiettivi definiti dalla COP28, l'Italia è fortemente impegnata nella continua crescita dell'efficienza energetica. Efficiency first è il principio fondamentale attorno al quale è progettato il nostro sistema energetico. A livello nazionale, in linea con il contesto europeo per contribuire al doubling globale del settore di efficienza energetica, l'Italia sta aggiornando il Piano Nazionale Energia e Clima per definire i migliori strumenti e le misure di supporto per il raggiungimento di sfidanti e concreti obiettivi settoriali al 2030. In ambito internazionale sono lieto di sottolineare che quest'anno l'Italia ha il privilegio e la responsabilità di ospitare la presidenza di turno del G7. Nel corso della nostra presidenza, per la prima volta nella storia del G7, l'Africa è tra le priorità strategiche dei lavori del G7 e lo sarà anche nel corso del prossimo Leader Summit G7 di giugno 2024, riconoscendo l'Africa quale partner globale della transizione energetica sostenibile, sicura e accessibile, per assicurare crescita, prosperità comune e un futuro a emissioni nette zero per le generazioni di oggi e di domani. A soli 5 mesi dalla COP28 l'Italia, insieme agli altri paesi del G7, nel comunicato ministeriale sull'energia, il clima e l'ambiente adottato non più tardi di 3 settimane fa, ha riconosciuto l'importanza di sostenere i paesi in via di sviluppo e quelli più vulnerabili per contribuire agli sforzi globali per raddoppiare il tasso di efficienza energetica entro il 2030, rafforzando anche il ruolo di primo piano svolto dal settore pubblico nel potenziamento degli interventi di efficienza energetica sia a livello nazionale che regionale, promuovendo misure normative e finanziarie efficaci per una transizione energetica equa e incentrata sui cittadini. Inoltre, nel comunicato i Paesi G7 hanno invitato l'Agenzia Internazionale dell'Energia, che ringrazio per la continua e preziosa sinergia nel corso dell'attività Energia e Clima G7, a promuovere il raggiungimento dell'impegno globale per l'efficienza energetica della COP28 anche attraverso i lavori di questa nona conferenza annuale globale sull'efficienza energetica di Nairobi, oltre a continuare a impegnarsi nel monitoraggio globale come nell'implementazione degli strumenti a supporto delle politiche per l'efficienza energetica. Ritengo che l'obiettivo globale di Dublin nel settore efficienza energetica potrà essere raggiunto solo sostenendo concretamente i paesi in via di sviluppo, le economie emergenti e quelle più vulnerabili sia a livello tecnico, attraverso attività di assistenza tecnica e lo scambio di linee pratiche per creare quadri normativi stabili anche volti ad attrarre investimenti che a livello finanziario attraverso il supporto economico per l'avvio di progetti di interesse. In tale contesto desidero sottolineare che l'Italia ha lanciato il piano Mattei per promuovere una transizione energetica giusta, sostenibile e inclusiva nei paesi africani, favorendo le opportunità di crescita economica e sociale. L'Italia è in prima linea per contribuire a questa sfida globale supportando i paesi in via di sviluppo, le economie emergenti e quelle più vulnerabili, nel trasformare le sfide di oggi in opportunità per una transizione energetica basata su servizi energetici sostenibili, moderni, efficienti e accessibili, promuovendo l'accesso universale alle energie pulite, la riduzione delle emissioni in tutti i settori anche attraverso lo sviluppo di tecnologie chiave e la creazione di quadri normativi ambiziosi e abilitanti a contribuire al raddoppio dell'efficienza energetica a livello globale entro il 2030. Siamo certi che i lavori della conferenza globale sull'efficienza energetica contribuiranno in maniera pragmatica ed efficiente a sottolineare il ruolo dell'efficienza energetica quale primo carburante della transizione energetica globale e delle nostre economie e individuando le azioni necessarie per contribuire a favorire il raggiungimento degli obiettivi globali COP28. Guardando al futuro, mi auguro che gli sforzi congiunti di tutte le parti coinvolte possano portare a risultati tangibili, per un coordinamento e un'azione efficace nel muoversi insieme proprio del proverbio africano che ho citato, favorendo un ordinato sviluppo dei sistemi energetici per accrescere la sicurezza, la resilienza, l'efficienza nei consumi e la riduzione delle emissioni. Vi ringrazio e auguro buon lavoro a tutti.
So thank you very much, Your Excellency, Claudio. Our next speaker will be the Principal Secretary, Mr. Alex Washira. Mr. Alex Washira was appointed the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, State Department of Energy in December 2022. Mr. Washira has a wealth of experience from the private sector, where he worked as an investment banker and previously worked with FIDA Investment Bank, where he traded and structured treasury bonds and corporate bonds at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. He has also worked with Dye & Blair Investment Bank and Gengis Capital Limited. Mr. Washira.
Thank you, Susan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I want to echo what our Cabinet Secretary, David Chirchir, mentioned in his speech, and welcome you home once again. Secondly, I want to congratulate His Excellency, the Cabinet Secretary, and I want to quote one former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who once said that you cannot climb the ladder of success with your hands in the pocket. You have to remove your hands in the pocket. Our Cabinet Secretary last year, when he went to Paris for the IEA, the Global Conference on Energy Efficiency, raised Kenya's hand, and through the act of raising Kenya's hand, we are gathered today, and we thank IEA and the entire world for noticing that our Cabinet Secretary had raised his hand and he was ready, and Kenya was ready to host the 9th Global Conference on Kenyan soil, on the African soil for the first time. So we thank IEA for that. Secondly, I want to speak to one of the issues that Commissioner Amani Abu Zaid did mention. And Commissioner, I don't know whether you know that your first name is a Swahili name. And that name, for those of you who do not know, the name Amani in Swahili means peace. And you did mention that when we are in the African soil discussing about energy efficiency, let us not also forget that we have about 690 million people on the African continent that have no access to electricity. So when we are talking about the energy efficiency, 690 people may not be able to understand what we are talking about. Again, but it's also very, very important that when we are talking about energy efficiency, and you did give statistics that in terms of our transmission and distribution, we are losing about 20 to 40% on average. At least when I speak about 20 to 40, KPLC of Kenya, that is our distribution, is very happy to hear that Africa is 20 to 40 because we are averaging around 22%. But we do have an ambition of lowering our distribution and transmission losses to around 15% in the next 4 or 5 years. And we do believe that that is going to happen. And while we are doing so, is also geared towards lowering the cost of power. Because once we lower our distribution and transmission losses, that directly translates to lower power bills, and that is what energy efficiency is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed delegates, distinguished guests, we have gathered here to address a matter of utmost urgency and significance: implementation of doubling energy efficiency goal. During COP28, just concluded COP28 in Dubai last year, governments worldwide called for doubling of global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements in this decade. Kenya's government joined other states and organizations within the mission efficiency ecosystem and signed the pledge on commitment to accelerate actions and efforts to achieve these targets. Kenya offers leadership in energy efficiency and renewable energy in East African region and has committed to promote efforts towards regional harmonization of standards and policies in the region. Doubling energy efficiency in Kenya helps in improve energy security, reduce the expenditure of foreign currency reserves on imports, on energy imports, lessen the strain on the national grid during peak times, and lower the cost of externalities associated with emissions. As we delve into the discussions, we need to focus on improving energy efficiency in transport, commercial, domestic, industrial, and institutional sectors. We are committed to collaborate with others of like mind to further the ambition of doubling energy efficiency targets locally and globally. I look forward to fruitful discussions during this forum Thank you very, very much. Asante.
It's an opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Carol Koech. I'm the Strategy Director for Sustainability and Thought Leadership at Schneider Electric International Operations. Our next speaker will be speaking and sharing her perspectives from German Energy Agency. Her name is Corinna Anders. Corinna has been CEO and chair of the executive board of the German agency since 2023. With an academic and professional background in law, Corinna Anders joined the Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety in 2008, where she worked in various divisions. From 2012 to 2016, she was seconded to the Federal Foreign Office and assigned to the German Embassy in Nairobi as Deputy Permanent Representative of Germany to the United Nations Development Program, UNEP, and the United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat. She was previously a member of the German team at the International Climate Change negotiations, focusing on organizing COP23 in Bonn. Welcome, Corinna.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody. I'm very delighted to speak on this very important topic. It is an honor to be here with you. I would like to thank the IEA team for organizing this session here in Nairobi, and then of course also thank Kenya to host this conference here. For me, it's coming back as I used to live here for almost 5 years, and I'm very happy to be here. Energy efficiency is still underrepresented, and I'm very much welcome that the conference will focus on this issue in the next 2 days. I'm the CEO of the German Energy Agency, a public company with almost 600 experts working on climate protection and energy transition. We support the German government in various projects to achieve the climate protection targets and the transformation towards climate neutrality in 2045. The previous speakers have already underlined the importance of the COP28 results on energy efficiency and renewable energy. Germany and the EU and many other countries, but also companies, scientists, and other stakeholders pushed for the decisions. They are a milestone for the global energy transition and send a strong message to investors, markets, and society. An exit from fossil fuels, tripling of renewable capacity, and doubling of energy efficiency by 2030. The global energy transition has picked up momentum. Energy efficiency improvements are challenging as they cannot easily be pushed top-down. But now is time to make things happen. Energy efficiency and renewable energies are not just two mitigation approaches, among others. In fact, they are the necessary prerequisite for tackling emissions in the energy system. Efficiency first, because it's the cheapest and safest climate mitigation option with many co-benefits, especially reduces supply dependencies and contributes to risk diversification. Energy efficiency is not only a core element for mitigating climate change, it is also the opportunity for social and economic development, for better livelihoods for all. In times of high energy prices, a smart and efficient use of energy brings also competitive advantages for companies and countries. There is an enormous potential that has not yet been exhausted, meaning there is a huge impact that can be made here. Compared to all other options, energy efficiency and renewable energy offer absolute highest mitigation potential at lowest costs. If we are not making sufficient use of both, we will fail in our fight against climate change. However, improving energy efficiency seems to be a rather complex issue. Challenges differ across sectors, companies, and countries. It is about switching fuels, increasing technical efficiency, and avoiding energy demand. Hence, it is also about changing behavior, regulatory interventions, and costs. Therefore, it seems that the topic is often not high up in the political agenda, even if it is. Lack of finance or limited access to finance are additional core barriers for the implementation in many countries. To bridge the gap between ambition and implementation, Germany sees an important role in the upcoming NDCs. With overall ambitious targets, a long-term planning horizon, and concrete sectoral plans and roadmaps, NDCs could become investment frameworks for energy efficiency and other key solutions. In Germany, we made good experience in involving non-state actors and especially the private sector in such processes. Especially for energy efficiency, a whole of society approach is of high importance. And we are currently witnessing that a clear regulatory framework does not only spur investment, but also innovation and technology development. In general, Germany tries to design energy efficiency instruments as market-oriented as possible, so that stakeholders have high flexibility in choosing and developing the most effective measures to reach the set targets. The market orientation translates into creating business cases for energy efficiency technology, for example, carbon pricing plus financial support and special financing instruments such as energy performance contracting. With the Energy Efficiency Act, which came into force in November last year, we have for the first time created a cross-sector legal frame for energy efficiency in Germany. The public sector intends to lead by example according to the Energy Efficiency Act. Public facilities will be obliged to introduce energy or environmental management systems as well as energy efficiency measures depending on their energy consumptions. The analysis regularly shows that there is sufficient potential to achieve our goals using technical means of energy efficiency alone. The use of digitalization and AI is key in various areas to improve energy efficiency and has a huge potential. But the question still arises, can we sufficiently exploit the potential with these means alone? I think that we also need to motivate citizens to take action for the benefit of climate. Communication and activation are central in this regard. Similar to the deployment of renewables, it is necessary to build up national and regional ecosystems for energy efficiency, consisting of clear targets, long-term development plans, regulatory frameworks and standards, investors, companies, science, and so on. Learning from each other and sharing best practice is key. Between countries, the Energy Efficiency Hub plays an important role in this respect. Across stakeholders, initiatives such as mission efficiency bear the potential to advance discussion, solutions, and the implementation. The recent G7 communiqué on climate, energy, and environment underlined important steps how to go ahead and implement our joint target of doubling the global rate of energy efficiency until 2030. Germany also pushes for a concrete and ambitious G20 outcome. Through many partnerships and cooperations formats, Germany and the EU are working with partner countries around the world on improving energy efficiency. I'm looking forward to discussing with you the potential solutions during the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corina. We have one last speaker, and then we will have a quick discussion around the topics shared. So our last but not least, Nasra Nanda is the CEO of Kenya Green Building Society. She's both the CEO and ESG lead. Nasra is a lawyer by profession and works across businesses, human rights, and environmental issues. She's active as a public policy and advocacy committee member of the Kenya Property Developers Association and is now a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force in KPDA 2. Nasra is a special elect member of the County Assembly at the Nairobi City County Assembly, where she champions sustainability with a focus on the urban agenda, women, youth, and minorities. A technical assistant in the task force on re-engineering and transformation of urban development in Kenya, and part of the Global Policy Task Force at the World Green Building Council. Nasra.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us here in Kenya, where we welcome you and say, Karibu sana, to the pearl, really, and the jewel of Africa. Before I dive into what I want to say, there are two things I hope you take away from what I tell you today. Number one, that when it comes to sustainability, we do not lack technical expertise. There's so many experts in the room, often repeating the same thing. What we lack, really, is relational expertise. Because if all of us are scientists, if all of us are experts and we're speaking the same language, we all understand this language. But the common man and woman is often an overlooked demographic. And that is where we can create the most impact. So my first challenge to you is when you think about energy efficiency, don't think about the executive who understands the lingo. No, think about what we call in Kenya the mama mboga, or the common lady who thinks about selling vegetables but lives in an informal settlement where electricity is something that she hardly understands. Second challenge to you is that when we think about the sustainability conversation, and in particular energy efficiency, often this conversation feels exclusive and not inclusive. Why do I say this? Often we don't engage with community players who have real challenges on a day-to-day basis, who can then tell you, for them, as you talk about sustainability and energy efficiency, what does that look like for them in informal settlements where a meal a day is something that they think is a constant challenge? So if we recalibrate our approach and think about the majority, not the minority, who is informed and converted, then we will start to see a change. So with those two challenges, I delve in what I want to say to you today. And that is, through my two hats, as the CEO of the Kenya Green Building Society, I lead a green building council, which is not your traditional green building councils. You see, green building councils traditionally talk about just sustainable buildings. But in the global south, where 60% of the population in Nairobi alone resides in informal settlements, our approach as the Kenya Green Building Society is to say, if we really want to push for sustainability, we need to look at the built environment as an ecosystem of opportunities and challenges. So the approach and mandate for us in the global south needs to be broader, so we're inclusive and not exclusive. Second, in my hat as a local government representative, cities in Africa are a key priority for impact, change, and opportunity. Cities are hubs where people come together, communities either live with dignity or are mistreated and live in poverty. In Africa, depending on how you view this conversation and what you want to take out of this conversation, your energy efficiency conversation, as we talk about the next 2 days, will either be something that the common man and woman sees as an opportunity or a barrier. I beg you to think about it in the former and not the latter, so that we can move together in finding a solution to this potential opportunity or crisis for Africa. Coming closer to home, the building sector is the primary source of energy consumption in Kenya, with the residential industry consuming about 74% of energy consumption in Kenya alone. This could be an ultimate game changer for people who are looking to make an impact and see the built environment as a key partner in driving change in a way that can help the government. In Kenya, one of the key priorities is the affordable housing agenda. How can energy efficiency become an avenue for impact, an avenue for driving investment in an already established government agenda, which is the affordable housing agenda? How can we look at Kenya, which is a key champion in what is called the Building Climate Resilience for the Urban Poor program, which seeks to look at climate resilience and adaptation on a people-focused lens, which I highly relate to when Commissioner Amani Abu Zaid mentioned, needs to look at people as the heart of the multiplying effect for any conversation to really move forward. And so, as we think about this conversation, I want to say that Kenya doesn't just talk. Kenya has taken active steps, including introducing the National Building Code, which looks at sustainability as an avenue of really driving impact in the sector. And yes, it's not really mandatory yet, but Kenya's taken enormous strides last year to ensure we had Africa's first climate forum, which gave climate and development a platform where for global South conversations, you can't separate the two. Because for Africa, the climate conversation is very much a development conversation, and vice versa. Second, I think, which is critical, for the first time ever last year at COP28, local governments were recognized as a key player in the climate conversation. So in merging those two together, you need to ensure that as you're growing African cities, global South cities, a priority needs to be looked at in how urbanization is going to be a key issue or opportunity for African states. So how can we leverage energy efficiency, energy access as a way to empower the Africans who really, at the heart of this conversation, want a life of dignity? And so if we look at the global South, and in particular, the informal settlements, it's an issue of looking at health and well-being in as much as economic benefits when you think about energy efficiency. It's also looking at infrastructure and development, because a lot of informal settlements often lack proper infrastructure, including reliable electricity grids. So when you think about implementing energy efficient solutions to help bridge this gap, remember, you're not just tackling an energy efficiency issue, you're tackling a gap, a poverty issue, a dignity issue, an empowerment issue. When you think about a solution, don't think about it in a technical way only. Also look at the social implications of what you're trying to do. You're trying to create an equalizer and in an unequal world. And that, for me, is what I think we need to do in recalibrating this conversation, really driving the human element and relational element to ensure we make progress together. And lastly, as a key focus, when we think about energy efficiency, can we look at it as a partner to assist sustainable urbanization? As urban populations in the global South grow, and this will be a very big problem for the global South, or a very big opportunity, a lot of the younger population will be migrating from rural to peri-urban and urban spaces in search of jobs, in search of opportunities. Here, if done correctly, energy efficiency can be a multiplier effect for green jobs. If done correctly, then you will have the young people coming to Africa and not leaving Africa so that they can get these opportunities to create the new and thriving Africa. In summary and in conclusion, promoting energy efficiency in the global South addresses critical issues of affordability, health, environmental sustainability, and resilience. And this is the only way we can truly contribute to the broader goals of poverty, alleviation, and sustainable development. Because if we walk together, then we go further. And if we walk together in an inclusive manner, then that's the only way that this conversation becomes a priority for us all, and not for some of us. Thank you.
So we'll have a small discussion. Could I request to switch on the roaming mics, please? Are we okay? So I'll ask the first question to Mr. Wachira. In your opinion, how can governments and industries collaborate to leverage the lessons from the global energy crisis and strengthen efforts towards achieving energy efficiency in a net zero future?
Thank you very much for that very good question. When I was speaking, I mentioned the statistics about what we are losing in terms of our electrons in the grid. And I did say that what we now need is to change this conversation and move this conversation towards funding. Because one of the key areas that we are lacking, for example, let me talk about KPLC, for example. Already we do have about 76% of our Kenyans already on the Kenyan grid. That means we still have about 24% that we need to connect to the grid. And for us to manage the transmission and distribution losses that we are currently having, then we must invest in smart grids. And that means that we must move this conversation from just having a conversation and make it a real conversation towards the liquid infrastructure, funding for all energy sectors across board. And let me speak about the global south, the sub-Saharan Africa, that I was, for example, in one of our neighboring countries, I will not mention where, but I can tell you that within that minute, every 30 minutes, there was a power outage. Why is that so? It's because we have not invested clearly in our grid, and that is why we need more funding there. Let me also speak about clean cooking. Numbers have it that in every 4 meals that are cooked in Africa, 3 meals are cooked using wood fuel. If you look at Kenya, for example, the last 7 months, we had a very prolonged drought of about 4 years. Then instead of having moderate rainfall, we have experienced very heavy rainfall, affecting thousands of livelihoods. And at the same time, we have lost in excess of 300 people. Why is that so? It is because of what we call climate change. For us to mitigate climate change, one of the ways, and our president is very keen, and has started a process of rehabilitating all our degraded forests. One of the ways of ensuring that we mitigate climate change is ensuring that, one, we go back and rehabilitate this degraded forest, and two, reduce cooking using wood fuel. Once we reduce cooking using wood fuel, we not only give dignity to our people, but we also reduce respiratory diseases. And by doing so, then we shall be transitioning these 3 meals that are being cooked using wood fuel to having access to clean fuel. Unfortunately, most of our institutions, for example, schools, hospitals, they are still using wood fuel as a means, as an energy towards cooking. And that is why I'm saying we must then move the talk of energy efficiency from just talking, but bringing in resources, including resources for clean cooking, such that we are able now to migrate this greater population, these 1 billion people that we are talking about, these 1 billion people who, when we talk about energy efficiency, when we talk about reducing transmission and distribution losses, these 1 billion people have no idea what we are talking about. And Zara did mention about them. And the only way now we can bring them on board on this side is by ensuring that we now walk the talk and enhance the funding. And COP28 did mention of accelerating. And I like what the Matteo plan is talking about of Italy. I like what they are talking about. I like the African partnership, and I like what we are talking about now, increasing 3-folds funding for renewable energy in Africa. If we are able to now move the talk from the boardrooms and ensure that there is adequate funding for all these programs that you are talking about. I can tell you for free that within the next years, by the year 2030, we should be able to see a significant change in terms of access to electricity and access to clean cooking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question is to Corina. Which specific policies or initiatives have been successful in Germany, and specifically in promoting energy efficiency, and how can these successes be replicated in other geographies?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. First of all, I would like to say that also in Germany there's still a long way to go, and energy efficiency has not always been on the highest agenda. So there is a long way ahead of us. I think a mix between a clear regulatory framework and financing programs, and maybe also market-oriented measures, are a good mixture to ramp up or to face the challenges we have with energy efficiency. Especially when it comes to financing programs, also in Germany, this is become a huge challenge. We have this in the international climate change, or financing is a huge challenge there, but also in Germany, and I think one of the main tasks we will face in the next year is how to mobilize also private investments. I think the public sector should play a leading role in all these areas, also in the energy efficiency. That's why we have also in our regulatory framework, the public sector is obliged to take this role and to take measurements on energy efficiency and reduce the energy consumption. I think also that cities play a very important role in all this because the energy transition is local and has to be implemented on a local level. That's why I think it's also very important that local or cities share their best practices and get advice on how to do it maybe in different regions of Germany. When it comes to the building sector in Germany, the building sector failed the third year in a row its targets, and we have a lot of old buildings in Germany. So the serial renovation or refurbishment could be of high potential. Serial refurbishment is a solution which combines digital planning and standardized processes with the prefabrication of roots elements, and then of course it includes also solar panels on it. So that is a very good solution to reduce costs and to be very efficient when it comes to the efficiency of the buildings. One also key element is the use of digitalization and artificial intelligence. There's a huge potential, and we just started with some measurements to use it much more. There we're then facing also the challenges: who is willing to share his data, what are the preconditions for it. So this is, I think where we have to elaborate much more on it, because it has, can have huge impacts. The main key for all of this is raising awareness on the potential of energy efficiency. There's a lack of acknowledgement in the industry, but also in the public, and that's what I think is also on a global level very important thing we have to focus much more. We have to communicate very clear on the potential, and to bring it directly also to the people, not only maybe to the cities or to government officials. It has to come directly to the people, that they see the potential of energy efficiency. We do have some campaigns in Germany to raise this awareness. For example, we had an energy efficiency a campaign, Do It Efficiently with different media, and of course with the focus to change behavior of the people. So that's maybe a few insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corina. Minister, you spoke about the inclusion element, and I am just going to find, from you how we can ensure that the benefits of energy efficiency policies are accessible to all communities, especially those in vulnerable populations, and how can we prioritize equity in transition to a net zero future?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think, firstly, when we're looking at the gaps, I think one of the things that I started noticing is when we look at the priorities in the transition, the energy transition, we think it needs to be a blanket approach. What works in the global north should work in the global south, which I don't think is the case. The global south is unique. It has its unique challenges in so many ways. That's not to say what the global north is doing is wrong. It just means that we can't have a uniform approach to coming up with solutions. So when it comes to, for example, the global south, one of the things that is critical, I think, is the social element when it comes to solutions. I earlier talked about health and well-being. I think there's a huge gap there in understanding how health and well-being could be a tool or a platform that could then bring in the energy conversation. In what way? For example, many informal settlements rely on inefficient and polluting energy sources, such as kerosene for cooking and lighting. And it's these sources that then create an issue around indoor air pollution. So if we start talking to these communities in a way where we're telling them, actually what we want is for you to have less health issues, then now talk about energy as a solution to those health problems, I think that could then drive impact forward with that demographic. Because I think if we relate to how it's affecting their day-to-day, their well-being, then we can make traction. So I think it's also a matter of the language and relating to a certain demographic that you want to create an impact from. That's a key, I think, gap. And then second, what are our priorities? In Kenya, as I earlier mentioned, we had affordable housing as a key priority. Is affordable housing truly affordable? I don't know. But could we look at how we could look at affordable housing as a tool where we're incentivizing an overlooked demographic and say, one of the key things that a community would want is to live with dignity, own a home or rent a home where they can live well. But closely tied to that, can we incentivize ownership with things like more sustainable use of materials, which are not going to harm them, and in turn also, tackle the, carbon conversation? I think if we're trying to drive change, we need to be able to understand two things: the demographic we're trying to tackle, and then the priorities of the government. Because creating something new might mean you have resistance from government, and communicating in a way that doesn't relate to the local demographic means you might be selling a solution that the local community is not interested in. I think those are two key gaps I've identified. And then the third one is, for Africa, adaptation is a key priority. And so when we think about energy efficiency, how are we then using energy efficiency to enhance the resilience of these informal settlements when it comes to how they access energy? And then can we look at how we can understand how we can reduce dependency when it comes to external energy sources? So I think local solutions really need to drive the conversation in a way that we have buy-in from people who don't understand, or maybe might not relate to the language that often we find in these spaces. And then lastly, the Global South tends to be a reactive market and not a proactive market. By this I mean the attitude is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's not a penalty, why is it an additional cost? And that's a reality, but that's not something that we think is negative. What you need to create is a proactive measure in creating incentives. The government is now really aware of the sustainability conversation as an opportunity for Africa. And that's why now the government, led by the president, is seeing how Kenya can champion climate. If we can ensure in reactive markets that we are identifying the incentives of government, of private sector, of communities, then this community, this government, these businesses will naturally want to join you in your journey. Without that, I think you'll have a lot of resistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask one bonus question to Mr. Wachira. And really, this is related to transport, and specifically looking at Africa and Kenya especially, we use a lot of second-hand vehicles. How does this impact the efficiency conversation?
Well, of course, when you're using second-hand vehicles, because in Kenya, majority of our vehicle imports are 7-year-old vehicles, we are seeing a tendency where the ratio in which we used to import the motor vehicles is changing by Kenyans now, because of probably improved economic output, increased disposable income, and incentives to local manufacturers. We are seeing now an increase in the uptake of newer vehicles as opposed to the 7-year-old vehicles, the second-hand vehicles. But we are not yet there. Now, one of the main issues in which I see this challenge is on the energy transition. Because as Europe and Asia is transiting and using more vehicles in terms of electric vehicles, it will take us a longer time if we continue with the tendency of importing the 7-year-old vehicles, second-hand vehicles. It will take us a longer time for us to transition. And so therefore, in terms of carbon emissions, because of using fossil fuels, then that means that we may drag slightly behind than the rest of the universe. But this, again, has all to do with what I spoke about, the issue of funding. We have since, as a country, through our regulator, EPRA, designed a tariff for e-mobility. We do also have an incentive of time of use tariff, whereby we are encouraging investors to use more power at night, so that we can reduce on what we call in geothermal, what we call venting. But most important is we want to encourage more investors to get to e-mobility, such that we can charge, because Kenya, most of the time, we still don't yet have a 24-hour economy. Most of the time, Kenya is asleep from 10 p.m. And so therefore, we can use the excess energy in the grid to transition and to use it for e-mobility. We are also looking into ways of reducing probably the costs of importation of e-vehicles, so that we are able to increase the uptake of the e-mobility vehicles. And let me speak also about the border riders, who are majority of them. We do have about 2 million people who are on the informal employment of, that is, the motorcycle industry. And also, we are also trying to see which ways can we be able to help these people to transition from using the normal motorbike that uses fossil fuel to use motorbikes that are using electricity. And that then again speaks to funding, because we need the investors who are ready to help in the battery swapping. We need funding for them. We also need funding for those organized groups in the border business, such that they can be able to convert their engines from using the fossil fuel to using electricity. But all that, at the end of the day, speaks to funding, and that is why I said, for us now to talk about doubling the energy efficiency, we have to move from this boardroom and move towards ensuring that there is access to affordable funding, such that these groups that I have mentioned about have access to funding and then can be able to transition. Most important, as a country, what we'll end up doing is reduction in our carbon emissions, and most important is reduction in terms of foreign exchange bleeding, because once we are able to transition well, then we reduce, because Kenya is an importer of fossil fuel, and so therefore, once we are able to reduce the use of fossil fuel, then we reduce our bleeding in terms of foreign exchange, and thereby strengthening our our Kenyan shilling. So, Susan, I submit with all those points and summarize and say all this speaks to one issue called access to financing, and that is what we must be able to address within these 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are going to wrap up. Do you have any last remarks?
Yes, maybe on the e-mobility, I just wanted to share with you that I visited yesterday a Kenyan company, and they produce the bodabodas, the electric bodabodas, and it was so impressive how they do it and what potential is there. They're of course also funded by several governments, and they won a startup prize in Germany 2 months ago, and yeah, now I could visit them, the winners of the SET Award, and it was fantastic to see how Kenya goes further with the e-mobility.
Thank you. Nasra, last comments?
Thank you. I think in conclusion, I just want to say that 2 challenges that I raised before: make it inclusive, make it relational, and identify the priorities. For global South countries, that's a very different approach from global North countries. Once you identify the priorities, then we can create a strategy to access finance, because you can't chase money if you don't have a plan. Have the plan, make it inclusive, make it something that relates to what's happening in local markets, and then pitch for financing, because you will be pitching financing with a purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been a good, I'll just wrap up with a few summary of what I heard. I think energy efficiency is equivalent to lower cost. It guarantees energy security. It helps to lower the demand on foreign currency requirements. It lowers emissions. But for us to achieve this, I think financing is a key topic. We appreciate that technology today exists to drive some of these energy efficiency topics. We do have technology. We also have expertise, but we need to speak to each other. I think the role of digitalization and AI is going to play a big role. We've heard from Corina that they're already playing and using this in Germany. But more importantly, we have to partner, because together we can go far. Thank you very much. Just a small announcement. I think after this session, we are invited to go out on a break.